Warning: this video is not intended for a younger audience. It may contain language, visuals, or opinions not suitable for all viewers. "10 years. 10 years have passed, and the 20-teens are now behind us. And a lot of stuff happened in those 10 years. Some pretty cool, while other things that weren't. However, despite the random missteps here and there, we got plenty to be excited over and enjoyed immensely, and those are the games we're going to talk about today. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is FeatherHoof, and welcome to my top 10 favorite video games of the decade. Note, this is a highly subjective list of those games I actually played and loved that were first released in the US between January 2010 and December 2019. So, no ports, remakes, or remasters here, no matter how amazing they were. We all have our favorites, I'm sure you have yours, but today we're going to talk about those 10 that stood out to me as some of the most fun I've had in gaming this past decade. There were more than 10, and it hurts to have to cut some of them, but I had to narrow it down, and this list is what I came up with. Note, as is the nature with lists like this, spoilers are a possibility, so be aware of that right off the bat. And with that said, let's go ahead and dive right on in.
Number 10.
You can't play Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4 without hearing the comparisons to how it's just Batman Arkham games with a shiny Spider-Man wrapper. And while I can see that from a mechanics standpoint, this game had so much more to offer. A slew of fun gadgets you could use in conjunction with one another to create fun combos. An open world full of people to save, crimes to thwart, Easter eggs and collectibles practically everywhere. One of the most heartfelt comic book stories ever told in a video game. And an excellent 3-episode DLC campaign story. If I had to knock it for anything, personally, I was not a fan of the Screwball missions. I wasn't a fan of her as a character, and her missions didn't do much for me either, outside of frustrate me. But overall, the game did a great fan service to the Spider-Man universe, was extremely fun to play, and I could listen to J. Jonah Jameson's ranty podcast broadcasts on loop and continue to laugh.
Number 9.
I was a huge fan of the original Borderlands, released back in 2009. It was fun, it was simple, it had 4 great DLCs, but it had its flaws. 3 years later comes the launch of Borderlands 2, which took everything great about the original and either fixed or expanded on it. The storytelling was better, the characters were more fleshed out, there were more, bigger, and badder enemies and bosses, a bigger world, a better UI and HUD, the improved skills system. Everything about this game was Borderlands, but better. And they supported this game what felt like endlessly. Tons of DLC for costume skins, seasonal holiday mini-campaigns, another 4 excellent campaign DLCs, and even brand new characters. Which, by the way, Gage was best character. You cannot deny the power of the Necromancer. And, of course, let's not forget the best part of this game. I mean, other than the Tiny Tina DLC. Handsome Jack. One of the best villains in gaming, period. A character that's just so much fun to hate. And going back to play the game from the beginning all over again as a different character didn't feel like a chore, but more fun because you got to listen to and deal with Jack all over again.
Number 8.
For those that don't know, the Xenomorph from the movie Alien is my absolute favorite movie monster of all time. Even if it's been in more crappy movies than good ones. So, it goes without saying, I was excited to see the reveal of this game, Alien Isolation. And I was not disappointed. They got everything right about this game for fans of the movies. From the aesthetics of the ships and Sevastopol and their interiors, the clothing, the technology level, the lighting, the atmosphere, the terror, the suspense. It feels like you're playing a game set smack dab between Alien and Aliens. Playing as Ellen Ripley's daughter Amanda as she searches for her lost mother just sets it right in a place that firmly anchors it into the lore and makes you invested if you're a fan of those movies. The constant feeling of isolation and helplessness against an unkillable creature that learns as the game goes, and it constantly keeps you on edge as you try to survive. My only complaint with the game is that it is a tad longer than it needs to be. There were definitely whole large sections of this game that could have been cut out to make it more concise without sacrificing anything, and it would have been better for it. Plus, there's no real worry whether Amanda's going to make it out in the story or not, because if you've watched the opening to the director's cut of Aliens, they spell out her fate for you. Still, if you like horror and you're a fan of Alien or Aliens, this is a must-play. It's on every home console and PC, and looks and runs good on all the various platforms. Definitely worth your time if you're a fan of survival horror.
Number 7.
A brand new IP from Capcom at the time, Dragon's Dogma arrived on the scene in 2012 to generally positive, but mixed reviews. Oh, X game does this mechanic better, and Y game does that mechanic better. Yeah, sure, this is true. Dragon's Dogma is the jack-of-all-trades open-world giant monster-killing adventure. It doesn't do any one thing as good as X game or Y game, but it does them all well, at least competently. But what this game does do that's all its own is the pawn system. You have your create a character, the Arisen, and they get their own personal ally, also created by you, called a pawn. Your pawn learns enemies, quests, locations, and secrets as you do, and retains that knowledge, and will repeat what it's learned ad nauseum. Take the game online, and your pawn can now be recruited by other players, and learn even more things in those people's games, and bring that knowledge back to you. Complete your party with 2 pawns made by other people, and it creates this online community where everyone is teaching the game to each other through their pawns. My only complaints are that while the gameplay is fun, and it is, and the pawn system awesome, the story is nothing to write home about. It's pretty standard fare for a medieval knights and kings and dragons story. It has a neat twist at the end that almost makes up for the rest of the story being kind of by the numbers. That, and at one point they had to remove the title screen's theme. Into Free Dagon by Bees. B''Z. To this generic boring theme, possibly due to licensing issues. Those complaints aren't enough though to stop me from singing the game's praises, and continuing to play it, and find other people's pawns, and teaching them knowledge to take back to their creators. It's great fun.
Number 6.
It took a while for Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age to come to the US. Initially releasing in Japan on July 29, 2017, it didn't see a worldwide release until September 4th, 2018. But if you're a fan of classic-style turn-based JRPGs, hey wait, I'm one of those! Then it was well worth the wait. Featuring the familiar art style of famed manga artist Akira Toriyama, notably of Dragon Ball fame, and a back-to-JRPG basics combat system, the game tells an excellent series of little stories as well as one larger overarching one, with fun, unique, and memorable characters. The flexible skills board allows you to build characters as you see fit, multiple ways to play each character to build parties that work for you, being able to swap them in and out on the fly. This game is amazing. Problems arise though that the definitive way to play this game, at this time, is only on the Switch. It's on the PC and PS4, but without the Switch's orchestrated soundtrack. And the Switch version has events and quality of life changes that make the game far better of an experience, leaving some of those that bought it previously on those 2 platforms feeling kinda cheated. Still, that's a problem with the developers, not the game as a whole. and I'm not going to hold that against the game. It's still fantastic, even if you do play it on PC and PS4. But if you have a Switch, while it may be graphically inferior, definitely get it on that.
Number 5.
The game that brought the highly popular in Japan franchise Monster Hunter to a larger audience, it's Monster Hunter World. A game that, while maintaining the soul and essence of what makes a great Monster Hunter game great, made plenty of quality of life and modernized changes to help the series appeal to a wider audience. Picking up any one of the game's 14 weapons, each with their own highly unique gameplay mechanics and abilities, you set off from your home base of Astera into the new world to solve the mystery at hand. And how do you solve this mystery, I hear you ask? Why, by hunting monsters and turning their hides and parts into weapons and armors, of course! The basic loop of this game is an absolute grindfest, which, on paper, doesn't sound very appealing. But the monster fights are so fun and appealing that it doesn't feel like a chore fighting monsters multiple times. It's definitely a challenging game, as you need to learn monsters' tells and react with near pinpoint precision. But once you've learned how to use your weapon of choice and how to fight the monsters, the game is a never-ending loop of incredibly fun combat. With the added processing power of modern consoles and PCs, Monster Hunter World is the most beautiful looking and running game in the series. The only issues, however, come from while it's on multiple platforms, there's no crossplay for multiplayer. And if you bought it on PC, you had to wait several more months for the game's release. And then when it did release, you felt rushed all the time to complete the events, because they rushed them out faster than on the console, because they were trying to catch the PC version up to the console version. Still, with tons of content, crossover events with, say, Final Fantasy XIV, The Witcher, Horizon Zero Dawn, and a whole slew of Capcom titles, seasonal festivals, and more content being patched in all the time, there's always something to go back to and enjoy in Monster Hunter World.
Number 4.
The first ever game I did as a Let's Play here on this channel, Ori and the Blind Forest, released simultaneously on Xbox One and PC in March 2015. After its reveal trailer, all I knew is that the game was a very pretty Metroidvania. After I played it, I realized it was a phenomenal Metroidvania with gorgeous music, sounds, and visuals that told a heart-rending story of the most adorable video game protagonist ever. Mechanically, this is a Metroidvania like any other, albeit an incredibly gorgeous and, at times, challenging one. But the one thing that stood out to me was the skill Bash. Being able to take enemies or the projectiles and bounce off of them added to the gameplay in so many ways, in the way you explore or solve puzzles, to the way you approach combat. The game also forgoes the traditional boss fights. The closest they get are mini-bosses, but there's no bigger a challenge with them than any normal enemies. But what they have in their stead are these incredibly tense and beautifully orchestrated escape sequences. The stages themselves become very deadly bosses, where your only option is to run for your life using all the skills you've learned up to that point. Everything in this game is so beautifully and meticulously crafted and well thought out. There's very little I have to complain about, if anything at all. Perhaps sometimes it's a little too challenging, but that's not really a fault in my opinion. Pick up this game, have a stack of tissues ready to wipe your eyes and blow your nose, and enjoy one of the best Metroidvanias out there today.
Number 3.
On the surface, The Last of Us isn't breaking any new ground. Another surviving the zombie apocalypse tale, but instead of a zombie virus, it's a fungus. And we've seen this before. What's the big whoop? Playing the game, however, you don't have to go too deep to see why it's praised as a masterpiece in our time. You're not an invincible soldier of fortune, or someone stuck to the teeth with loads of ammunition to lay out hordes of enemies. It's very easy to die, and stealth and planning are essential, using stealth takedowns and bows and arrows to kill enemies without others noticing, and only whipping out your guns when the craps hit the fan and you need to blast your way out of a situation. It's very smart about its level layouts and designs and enemy placements. It definitely requires thinking about so you'll stay alive and not use up all your preciously limited resources in the process so you can stay alive for the next encounter. Beyond its mechanics, it has a fantastic story told through some extremely well-written characters. Every pain and awful moment is presented so well that I absolutely feel it. Even if I know it's coming, the acting, writing, and music make every joy and sorrow that much more powerful. And you feel it every single time. It honestly makes the game's campaign that much harder to go through a second time for me, as I don't want to feel like that again. Still, it's one of the best experiences I've had this decade, and one I'm definitely happy to have had.
Number 2.
Let's not bury the lead and pretend that Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, released September 30th, 2010, wasn't bad. It was more than bad. Poor choices by the developers, mechanics no one wanted or asked for, and it was, by all accounts, an absolute mess. It's no wonder it almost died. Skip to 3 years later, and the game that was exhaling its last breath was revived with Final Fantasy XIV version 2.0, A Realm Reborn, appropriately named. Naoki Yoshida, also known as our beloved Yoshi P, all hail to Yoshi P, headed the team that brought this game back from the brink and gave it such a thorough overhaul that it went from being one of gaming's biggest disasters to one of its most incredible underdog and success stories. I almost skipped this game entirely. I played other MMOs, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XI, City of Heroes, Star Wars Galaxies, Matrix Online, etc. And the genre didn't seem to do anything for me. I always found myself frustrated or bored with them rather quickly, to be honest. It wasn't until a friend brought me to his place to show me the game on PS3 and beg and plead with me to buy it as well to play with him that I caved and got it as well. And folks, I can't explain why this MMO did something for me that none of the others did. Even the other Final Fantasy-based one. But I was hooked. Compelling stories, interesting characters, a beautiful world that's fun to explore, and a job system that allows you to roll a single tune and play any of the game's jobs at any time. This game completely turned my opinion of the MMO genre 180 degrees. And I've been having fun with it ever since I was pressured into playing it 6 years ago, and I don't regret a second of it. Honestly, check it out. If you have a PS4 or a PC, it has a free demo that allows you to play up to level 30. There's no reason not to if you're even the slightest bit interested and you have one of those consoles. Oh, and don't forget to get on the Adamantoise server on the Ether Data Center so you can play with yours truly. Seriously, I hope to see you in the world of Eorzea. Trust me, you'll have a fun time. Now, before we reveal my number 1 favorite game of the decade, let's quickly go through some of the honorary mentions I couldn't possibly go without mentioning.
Might want to watch yourself. Raining demons out here.
To be unkindled is to be a vessel for souls. Sovereignless souls will become thy strength.
I am a Therian! No, leave me alone!
Wait!
Number 1.
This might be a cheat, but I don't care! So far as I'm concerned, Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 are just one continuous story stretched out across 2 games brought out 2 years apart. And what a game! Between the release of the original Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2, BioWare was bought up by EA. And when Mass Effect 2 came out, it was clear that EA got its hooks on it. From the get-go, it was very different. Some praised the changes, others hated it. Me? I rolled with the punches and gave it a chance. Was it different? Mechanically, yes. But it wasn't a bad change. It was just different. The Mass Effect soul was mostly still intact, even if they took certain things away. But the dialogue, the characters, the grand epicness of this universe and its events were still all there. Stepping back into the shoes of a revived Shepard and waging war with guns, special class specific powers, powerful new and returning allies, and careful use of dialogue options was even more fun than ever. Personally, I'm a FemShep player myself. I just thought Jennifer Hale did a better job than Mark Meer. No offense. I know many people hated the ending. Now, let's not pretend that that didn't happen. Mass Effect 3 went down in gaming history for people pitching a fit so badly that they actually went back and released a DLC that gave it an alternate ending. To me, the RPG choice ending did not take away from any of the epicness the rest of the game delivered. The hype, the tense action, the feels. I came away with more positive impressions than not. Both games were supported with campaign, lore expanding, and character DLCs that kept me coming back to immerse myself in that world time and time again. Because of the multiple choices you can make through the games, it was always fun to go back and see what little differences and big differences your choices would make. It was an incredible ride across many playthroughs, with different Shepards, with different backgrounds, with different love interests, that I don't regret it for even a second. Complain about Mass Effect 3's ending until the cows come home. I don't care. It was still the most absolute fun I had in gaming this past decade, period. And that's my list. What did you think? Did we share any like experiences? What were your favorite games of the past decade? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, let me know with a like, comment, subscribe, share it, or you can click on the annotations for other videos I've done. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.